Let's dive into the discussions shaping the nation.
And again, I welcome the opportunity. I want to thank Sinn Féin for bringing this PMB, because it allows us a little more time today than I had last week to maybe go back on some of the topics, and I think that's very important. I also think the motion, and indeed the amendment to it in part, is good, and that we've acknowledged all the good work on the ground, and I think that's been set out clearly, and that's very important. And I also want to acknowledge that the latest update that we've got as of today after 5 o'clock was that the ESB networks, they said all of the power will be back by tonight, and that's particularly welcome if they succeed in doing that. Mar tugan bishe o cahar na Gaillimhe agus an cahar sin agus an conde hí sé hís ó híomh na storma seo, hí sé búilte go donna agus daoine gan cuacht go GNU agus seo an tríú lá tar éis na storma. Agus in anón na haibria agus an méid aibre atá déanta ag na agrachtaí ar an talamh, tá sé solar dumsa nach raibh planar bithí gceist í áireara. Agus tá súlagam go mbeidh cíl ceannaithe agan inis as an méid atá fólama agan an uair seo. And I have no interest in criticising people, and we've set out how much work has been done on the ground, but it's clear that this government and previous governments have not learned from the fact that we've declared a climate emergency, a biodiversity emergency, and also a pandemic that we were ill-prepared for with our infrastructure on every level. And so what I'd like to see arising out of this is that we will learn. And I quoted the last time very briefly, and again I just refer to it because it's extremely important. The Annual Review 2024, Preparing for Ireland's Climate Change, the Climate Change Advisory Council. And it identifies, makes observations, and very helpfully identifies the gaps and makes recommendations. And one of them that jumps out, following on from my colleague here, Deputy Healy, is the inadequate resourcing of the local authorities, to mention a lot more. But it's set out here in black and white for us, and it's been set out every year. And so while this storm was unprecedented, we knew well that storms were going to come and get worse. And as I understand it, there were 11 named storms alone in 2023, the warmest year on record, followed by 24. So we either actually make our words mean something in relation to having declared a climate emergency, or we might as well give up. And this report, amongst many other reports, very helpfully points out as well the cost of not doing something. So we're now looking at the cost of this, and I have headlines here from the City Council in Galway, and they're talking about 15 million to address some of the damage done. And the city was badly affected, but the county was much worse. And that's a very conservative estimate, and I understand, Minister, they've written to yourself in relation to this. So now we have a local authority that's struggling full-time in relation to not having enough funding, both the city and the county, and they regularly tell us, only 2 weeks ago they told us they're the worst funded local authority in the country, and now they're struggling in relation to this and appealing to the government. And then on top of that, we have all the confusion that exists in relation to the schemes. And like with COVID, the government has done great work in helping, but the confusion as to who will benefit from that under the humanitarian assistance, or whether businesses will, and so on. Total confusion in relation to that. And then I read out some of the 7 headings that a local doctor kindly put together to highlight what should have been done, and the fact that it wasn't done, it should be done in the future. And it's building on the resilience of communities themselves to be able to withstand a storm like this and worse in the future. And if we learn that, Minister, I'd be happy. But my experience in here and my experience from institutions is they don't learn. And they have to be forced and reactive. And what this report is telling us, we have to stop that, and we have to be proactive. Because not alone will the costs of dealing with the damage be extraordinary, but more importantly, the costs of not dealing with it. And I understand that research has been done between the Climate Advisory Council and the ESRI in relation to that, the economic costs of not dealing with climate change. in addition to funding local authorities as one of the gaps, they also highlight that we need urgently a national coastal strategy. There isn't a sign of it. There was a scoping exercise, but no national coastal strategy has been rolled out in relation to erosion, in relation to the sea level rising. And then another thing that's come up for me today, and it's very significant for me in terms of wind energy and renewables, and the plan to build extraordinary high Muilcheguiha off the coast of Carna. The plan that's there, and I'm taking this opportunity to say that that plan to put over 30 windmills, 7 times higher, I think, I'll have to be corrected on that, on the Eiffel Tower. And that's gone before Bord Pleanála, and there's no hard copy available for the local people to examine or look at that. And I say that as someone that's committed to renewable energy. But if we want the people to come on board and the community, then to have such a big scheme as this going to Bord Pleanála with no hard copy. And why I mention that in particular is because I have a letter here in relation to an existing wind turbine project that's been there for over 20 years. And during the storm, the wind turbine was knocked to the ground. The photos are quite dramatic. And the nearest house was 300 metres. The road is only 10 metres. And this is a wind turbine project that's up and running for over 20 years. These concerned residents have written to the Health and Safety Authority and anyone else they can to draw attention to the fact that there's no clarity at all on how long a wind turbine, the life cycle of it, about the recycling of it, about the dangers, who monitors it. And the other project that I'm referring to is off the coast of Carna, very off the coast. It's misleading because it's very near to the coast, and that's where we recorded the highest winds during this storm of 184 kilometres. And so on. And the figures are all set out. So what I would hope in using this time that Sinn Féin has provided is that we would keep the pressure on to get proactive plans in relation to making our communities resilient and having a plan that puts the vulnerable first. There was absolutely no indication of that. A communication system that's not fit for purpose, where people couldn't even make emergency phone calls. And we had that from everybody, from the GPs on the ground to the ordinary people who couldn't have their dialysis.
Thank you, Deputy. Thank you. We
Garamacha
now
the
move to
Cathair.
the independent.
Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.